Ladies and gentlemen, why do we fear? Why, even when we have all the tools, all the support, and even a clear path ahead? Why does fear still show up uninvited? Because fear is part of being human, and yet, we often treat it as a flaw. We hide it, we avoid it, but here's the truth: fear is not the problem. The real problem is what we do when fear shows up. Some people run, some freeze, some quit altogether, but the most courageous among us, they choose to trust, not blindly, not passively, but actively, deliberately. They choose to trust God when fear comes. Let me share a story with you. Fear is something we all experience. It's a universal emotion, one that doesn't discriminate based on age, status, or belief. It creeps in at the edge of change, right before we step into something new, something meaningful. Often, we treat fear like an enemy. We resist it. We hide from it. We tell ourselves that if we were stronger or more faithful, we wouldn't feel it. But the truth is, fear isn't the enemy. It's a signal. A signal that what we're about to do, or the place we're about to step into, matters. Think about it. We don't get afraid of things that don't matter to us. We don't feel fear when we're doing something comfortable, easy, or familiar. Fear only shows up when we're standing at the edge of something significant, something that has the potential to grow us, challenge us, or change us. And that's why it's not something to avoid, it's something to pay attention to. Fear is actually incredibly honest. It doesn't lie to us, it simply reveals what we care about. It tells us that this decision, this relationship, this calling, it matters to us. And because it matters, it feels risky. Because it feels risky, it feels vulnerable. And when we feel vulnerable, fear naturally shows up. The problem isn't fear itself. The problem is when we let fear define our response. When we treat fear as a red light instead of a caution sign, we miss the opportunity to grow. We back down from the very thing that could take us to the next level in our lives, our faith, and our purpose. The goal is not to become fearless. That's a myth. The goal is to understand fear, what it's trying to tell us, and respond with trust. Trust in ourselves, yes, but even more so, trust in God, because fear will tell us, you can't do this. Fear will say, what if you fail? But that's where trust answers back, but what if God is with me? Trust doesn't remove the fear, but it silences its power. So the next time fear shows up, don't be surprised, and don't beat yourself up for feeling it. Instead, pause and ask, what is this fear trying to show me? Is it pointing to something meaningful? Is it exposing a place where you need to rely on God more deeply? When you begin to see fear as a signal, not a problem, you'll start walking through life with more courage. Not because the fear is gone, but because you've learned that fear is simply the front door to faith. And when you walk through that door, you discover a whole new level of strength you never knew you had, because it was never just about your strength. It was about trusting the one who walks with you, even when fear is loud. In our lives, moments of uncertainty are inevitable, and when we stand at the intersection of the known and the unknown, we are presented with a powerful choice, the choice to trust. Trust is not something that magically appears when conditions are perfect or when everything is clear and well lit. Instead, it is forged in the fires of uncertainty, a choice we consciously make when we dare to step forward despite the lack of certainty. When life seems unpredictable, trusting becomes an act of courage, a deliberate decision to believe in something greater than ourselves. Every day, we are faced with decisions that require us to take a leap of faith. Whether it's embarking on a new career path, entering a new relationship, or making a significant change in our personal lives, the terrain we navigate is often uncharted and full of potential pitfalls. In these moments, our natural instinct may be to rely solely on what we know, to cling to the familiar, and to resist the unknown. However, the true breakthrough happens when we recognize that trust is not the absence of fear or uncertainty, but a choice that we make in spite of it. Choosing to trust means embracing vulnerability. It means accepting that we do not have all the answers or complete control over outcomes. This is where our faith becomes instrumental. Trusting God, for instance, involves acknowledging that while our plans may falter, there is a greater plan at work, one that can guide us through even the most challenging times. When uncertainty looms, the decision to trust shifts our focus from what might go wrong to the possibility that we are being led by a force that is wiser and more powerful than our limited perspective can ever be. This act of trusting is both an internal and external journey. Internally, it reshapes our mindset. It allows us to reframe challenges as opportunities to grow and learn rather than insurmountable obstacles. Externally, it manifests as bold action. When you trust, you are not paralyzed by doubt. Instead, you take that brave step forward even when the future is unclear. You move with the conviction that while the road ahead may be fraught with uncertainties, the walk itself is filled with lessons and purpose. Trust is also a dynamic process. It evolves as we encounter life's varied experiences. At times, trust may come naturally when the outcomes align with our hopes and reaffirm our faith. Other times, when the path becomes rocky and the shadows of doubt lengthen, the decision to trust requires more effort and conscious choice. In these testing moments, remembering that trust is a commitment rather than a guarantee can empower us to persevere. The very act of choosing to trust, again and again, builds resilience and transforms our relationship with fear. When we choose to trust amidst uncertainty, we are not denying the challenges we face but acknowledging them as part of our journey. We understand that the willingness to trust, even when the future is shrouded in uncertainty, is what propels us toward growth. It is this deep-rooted, purposeful choice that allows us to forge ahead with hope and determination, confident that our path is illuminated by the guiding light of trust. In life, we often find ourselves waiting for certainty. We think that if we could just have all the answers, see the full picture, or know exactly how things will turn out, then we could move forward with confidence. We tell ourselves, once I'm sure I'll act. Once it makes sense, I'll trust. But the reality is, life doesn't work that way. Certainty is rarely guaranteed, and if we spend our lives waiting for it, we may never move at all. The truth is, you don't need certainty to trust. In fact, the very essence of trust is moving forward without knowing all the details. This is where faith becomes real. Trust is most powerful not when things are clear and easy, but when they're unclear and challenging. When everything around you feels shaky, your plans, your path, even your own confidence. Trust is the anchor that holds you steady. And when we talk about trusting God, it means stepping into situations where we may not understand the why, but we believe in the who. It's easy to say, I trust God, when everything is going our way. But trust is proven when circumstances test that belief. When the job falls through, when the door closes, when the diagnosis comes back different than expected, that is where real trust is born. It's in those moments that we must remind ourselves we don't have to see the end to take the next step. We don't need all the answers to move in obedience. God doesn't require our clarity, He honors our faith. The stories we admire most, whether in scripture, history, or even people around us, are often built on this very principle. Think of Abraham, who left everything familiar to follow a promise he couldn't fully see, or Moses, who stood in front of the Red Sea with no visible way forward, but chose to trust anyway. These weren't perfect people. They were people who made imperfect decisions but kept choosing to trust. Not because they had certainty, but because they had confidence in the one who called them. When you learn to walk in trust instead of waiting for certainty, something powerful happens. You begin to live with a freedom that isn't tied to outcomes. Your peace is no longer held hostage by things going your way. Instead, your peace flows from knowing that God is with you, even when you don't know what's next. This doesn't mean you won't wrestle with fear or doubt. It simply means you won't let those things stop you. Every time you choose trust over certainty, you strengthen your spiritual muscles, you grow in resilience, you deepen your connection to purpose. And you begin to realize that life is not about having a perfectly planned map, it's about trusting the guide. So the next time you find yourself stuck, waiting to be 100% sure, remember this. You don't need to know the whole story to believe that God is writing something beautiful. All you need to do is take the next step and trust. Fear often gets a bad reputation. We're taught to fight it, avoid it, or pretend it's not there. But what if we've misunderstood its role in our lives? What if fear isn't a sign that we're on the wrong path, but rather confirmation that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. It may sound strange, even counterintuitive, but the presence of fear can actually be one of the clearest indicators that you're stepping into something meaningful, something bigger than yourself. The truth is, fear doesn't show up when we're doing something easy or ordinary. It shows up when we're close to a breakthrough. It surfaces when we're standing on the edge of something significant, something that requires courage, vulnerability, and growth. It's in those moments when fear begins to whisper, "What if you're not good enough? What if you fail? What if people judge you?" But here's the secret. Fear only asks those questions when you're getting close to purpose. We often mistake fear for a stop sign. We feel afraid and assume it means we're going the wrong way. But more often than not, fear is a signpost that says you're stepping outside your comfort zone. And growth never happens inside the comfort zone. The things that stretch us, the moments that define us, they all come wrapped in uncertainty and fear. But they also come with the potential for transformation. Think about any big moment in your life, starting something new, having a difficult conversation, stepping up to lead, sharing your voice publicly. Were you completely calm and fearless? Probably not. You felt the weight of what was at stake. You felt the responsibility, you felt the risk, and that's exactly why it mattered. The presence of fear didn't mean you were unqualified, it meant you were invested. Even the heroes we admire, leaders, change makers, people of deep faith, felt fear. What made them different is not that they never felt afraid. It's that they didn't let fear be the deciding factor. They felt it, and moved anyway. They understood that fear wasn't a reason to turn back. It was a signal to lean in. When fear comes, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" try asking, "What is this fear trying to protect? Is it my comfort, my ego, my need for control?" And then go deeper. Is this something I'm willing to release in order to grow? When you shift your mindset in this way, fear loses its grip. It stops being the wall and starts becoming the doorway. Next time you feel afraid, don't automatically assume you're going the wrong way. Pause, breathe, look around. You may just be standing on holy ground, on the edge of calling, breakthrough, or growth. And in that moment, let fear be the reminder that what you're doing matters. Let it be the clue that you are, in fact, on the right path. Then do the brave thing, keep going. There's a common misconception that we need to be strong, fearless, and fully prepared before we can trust God. We believe we have to have it all together, that our faith needs to be perfect, and our emotions always under control. But the truth is, God doesn't need your strength. He just needs your surrender. That's a powerful shift in perspective. It means that trust isn't about proving how capable you are. It's about admitting how deeply you need Him. In a world that celebrates self-reliance and hustle, surrender can feel like weakness. We're taught to push through, to perform, to keep control. But when fear shows up, real fear, the kind that shakes your confidence and rattles your peace, no amount of pretending can fix it. You can't fake your way through spiritual fear. That's the moment where God gently invites us to let go. Not to give up, but to give over. To release our grip on trying to manage everything and instead say, "God, I don't have this, but I know you do." This kind of trust doesn't come from willpower. It comes from a place of humility and relationship. It's not about having all the answers, it's about knowing the one who does, and what a relief that is. Because on our own, we're limited, we get tired, we doubt, we fear, but God's strength is never limited. And the beautiful part is, He's not waiting for us to be strong. He's waiting for us to be willing. There's a story in the Bible that illustrates this perfectly. In the book of Judges, Gideon is chosen to lead Israel into battle, even though he sees himself as weak and unqualified. He's afraid, he questions God, but God doesn't rebuke him for his fear. He meets him in it, and he says something powerful, "Go in the strength you have. Am I not sending you?" Notice that God doesn't ask Gideon to be someone else. He just asks for Gideon's surrender, and that's all God needs from us too. Your surrender is not a sign of defeat. It's the start of divine partnership. When you surrender, you allow God to step in, to take the lead, and to work through your weakness. And often, That's where the most powerful things begin to happen. It's not when you feel the most confident or when everything is perfect. It's when you're on your knees, whispering through tears, "God, I trust you." When fear tells you that you're not enough, surrender reminds you that He is. When the path ahead looks too hard, surrender says, "I may not know the way, but I trust the one who does." You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be faithful. God isn't looking for the strongest or the most fearless. He's looking for those who are willing to hand Him the pieces and say, "Here I am. Use me anyway." Because in the end, trust isn't about having more strength. It's about placing your weakness in the hands of a God who is always strong. There's something profoundly transformative about trusting God in the middle of fear. Not after the fear is gone, not once everything has worked out, but right there in the middle. In the mess, the uncertainty, the trembling moments when your hands are shaking and your heart is racing. That kind of trust does more than just help you survive difficult seasons. It reshapes who you are. It turns fear into faith, weakness into strength, and waiting into preparation. Trusting God in fear doesn't just change your situation. It changes you. Most people think transformation happens when life gets better. But in reality, true transformation happens when we choose trust before things get better. When we make the decision to say, "God, I don't understand this. I don't see the way forward, but I believe you are with me." Something shifts on the inside. It's in that moment of surrender and belief that our spiritual roots grow deeper. Trust becomes more than just a word. It becomes a lifestyle. And here's the beautiful paradox. Fear becomes the doorway to transformation. It forces you to dig deeper than your emotions. It invites you to lean into something bigger than yourself. Fear says, "This is scary." But trust replies, "Yes, but God is still good." Fear says, "You might fail." And trust says, "Even if I fall, I won't fall alone." Fear screams that you're out of control, but trust gently reminds you that you were never meant to carry it all anyway. As you trust God in these fear-filled moments, you begin to realize that trust isn't passive, it's powerful. It's an active choice, a daily step, sometimes even an hourly decision to keep walking, even when the path is foggy. And every time you choose trust, you grow. You build spiritual muscle. You expand your capacity for peace, resilience, and wisdom. You learn to hear God's voice more clearly because you've chosen to listen in the quiet of uncertainty. This is how transformation happens. Not in grand, dramatic moments, but in the small, consistent choices to believe when it would be easier to doubt. Over time, those choices change your character. They shape your identity. You stop being someone who's tossed around by fear and start becoming someone who's anchored by faith. You walk through storms not because you're fearless, but because you're held. And something else happens too. You begin to inspire others. Your life becomes a quiet testimony to what trust can do. People watch how you carry peace in the middle of chaos, how you speak hope when things look hopeless, and they begin to wonder, what kind of strength is that? And the answer is simple. It's not your strength. It's the strength that comes from trusting God. So when fear rises, and it will, don't see it as a sign to shrink back. See it as an invitation to grow, to deepen, to transform. Because every time you trust God in fear, you're not just making it through. You're becoming who you were always meant to be.